Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Spanish Football Podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides. I'm joined by a jubilant Sid Lowe. Hello, Sydney, in your pink Oviedo shirt.
Hello, Philip. Hello. We actually won a game, helped by the fact that Sevilla went down to 10 men quite early on, and Uruguayan beefcake Fede Viñas scored the header that, well, I was going to say gave us a chance, but it maybe didn't because of another even more eye-catching result from this weekend.
So we're recording on Sunday evening because tomorrow is very busy, obviously, Champions League preview and all that. So we thought we'd do the Sunday night slot, which means that we won't be able to talk about Alaves against Osasuna, which is the Sunday night game. Monday Night Football is Girona Villarreal. But this is everything else that happened on Matchday 30 in La Liga EA Sports. Friday night saw Rayo Vallecano manage to actually score a goal and win a game of football. They beat Elche 1-0 at Vallecas. An unlikely hero in Randy Enteca, big Randy coming off the bench and managing to put the ball into the back of the net, something Rayo are not very good at. Then on Saturday, Real Sociedad beat Levante by 2-0. A pretty decent performance from La Real. Mallorca beating Real Madrid 2-1 in the eye-catching performance that Sydney was referring to. Vedat Murici scoring an injury time winner after Eder Militao thought that he'd salvaged at least a point for Real Madrid with a late equaliser. Betis and Espanyol played out a 0-0 draw, although Betis should have won. Espanyol still haven't won in 2026. And then the game of the weekend was Atletico Madrid against Barcelona. It was won by Barcelona 2-1, a late goal from Bobby Lewandowski off the bench onto the score sheet. More on that in just a moment. Sunday saw this ridiculous run from Getafe continue. They are pushing for a Champions League spot. Not far off. They're not a million miles away from a Champions League spot. They beat Athletic Club 2-0 at the Coliseum. Luis Vasquez and Mati Satriano scoring the goals. Tremendous January signings they are. Celta Vigo beating Valencia 3-2 at Mestalla, continuing their sensational away record. Celta, they hadn't won at Mestalla for 10 years, really got a terrible record there. But they were trailing 1-0 at half-time, but they turned things around in the second half, and Celta march on. And Real Oviedo beat 10-man Sevilla by a 0-0, as you said, scored by glorious Fede Viñas. Now, if you haven't got your tickets for TSFP Live in London already, it's not too late. There are a few left. We'll be upstairs at the Fox on the Green pub on Upper Street, Islington, on Friday, the 24th of April, from 6:30 p.m. Tickets are £19.50. That includes a drink. You can find the link in the episode description. And of course, you should come and join us at patreon.com/TSFP. There is loads of bonus content over there. You get the Monday and Friday podcast without any ads. There's a weekly Q&A pod. There's a bonus pod. And there's the TSFP newsletter, the diary, and the Discord. Over the summer, as always, we'll be podding exclusively for patrons. So come and join us from €4.75 a month. It's even cheaper if you get annual membership. So Sydney, let's start by talking about the big game of the weekend, which was obviously at the Metropolitano. Atletico Madrid making a number of changes for this game against Barcelona. Obviously, it meant considerably more to Barcelona than it did to Atleti. It was actually a pretty good performance from Atletico Madrid. When it was 11 against 11, they competed pretty well. Nico Gonzalez managed to get himself sent off, and they played the whole of the second half with a man fewer, but they held out until late on. Bobby Lewandowski with that goal. You were there, Sid. You were pitch side. What did you make of the whole thing?
Well, what I made of it, first of all, is, as you say, it was pretty good fun. It was quite open. Atletico Madrid possibly created more than I think we might have expected them to create. I think they had probably decided that this was a game where they didn't want to give too much away. They certainly didn't want players getting tired. And I must confess that when they went down to 10 men, you kind of looked at it and thought this might be the worst possible scenario for them, which is a scenario in which not only do they not win, but they have players tired out. I think we see that, for example, in the decision to remove Koke relatively early, in the decision to make substitutions. I think there were 3 of them, if I remember rightly, or 2 of them on 60 minutes. And that felt, for all the world, like a decision that was pre-planned, that this is right on a couple of players, handful of players only get an hour. The way they created their chances was in a semi-predictable way, in that they were relatively direct through the middle of Barcelona. And that perhaps is a surprise. It wasn't so much the 2 channels which is what we saw in the Copa del Rey game when they tore Barcelona to bits, with people bombing down the two wings. It was also right for the middle, and the first goal they score is really remarkably simple, because it's not even a particularly I was going to say it's not a particularly well hit pass. I suppose it is a well hit pass because it finds its target, but it's not a particularly hard hit pass. So it's floated up. Barca have a lot of time to see it. They don't judge the runs of the players well at all, and they get caught, and Simeone scores. I thought that Barcelona's opening to the game was actually pretty good. I thought they made two or three reasonably good chances around the edge of the Atletico area. There's the one where Lamine Yamal does this extraordinary nutmeg and outside the boot pass. There's another little interchange on the edge of the box involving Dani Olmo, which is really, really good indeed. And it was interesting to see Olmo play as a false nine. Then you get the Marcus Rashford goal. And at that point, you're thinking this is going to be a really good, fun second half with, I think, not an obvious favourite, but the feeling even then that possibly this would evolve in Barcelona's favour, partly because of what you said at the start. And I think this is the important preface for this whole analysis, which is that ultimately this probably mattered more to Barcelona.
It matters more. Yeah,
I think it did. I think that's true. Which isn't to say that Atletico didn't want to win, of course, but I think it does play a part. And then once it went down to 10 men, I think what that did was that it settled the approach to the game. As much as settling the result, and of course, I think it absolutely has an impact on the result and makes it easier, of course, in theory, for Barcelona to get the victory. I think what it did was it settled the approach from Atletico, which was, okay, you make those changes, you try and reinforce the midfield, you play a little bit deeper. Maybe you do jettison some of the chasing of people down. You do maybe allow them to advance a little bit further than you would normally like, but you try and stop them in that kind of rough area, sort of 7, 8, 9, 10 yards outside your penalty area. If needs be, you will be forced back. But I didn't think that Atletico went full bus parking. I think they tried to step out a little bit, and it was quite enjoyable, because although Atletico were down to 10 men, I thought they prevented Barcelona, who had all of the ball in the second half, or nearly all of the ball in the second half, prevented them from creating really clear chances. There was a couple. There's one that Lamine swings just past the post. There's another a really nice move to the right, comes into the 6-yard box, and it gets cleared right on the edge of the edge of the 6-yard box. There were a couple of moments. Let's speak to what you were saying about Bobby Lewandowski. When that falls for him, that winning goal, and it's 89th minute, and it's a bit lucky. It bounces off Juan Muso's chest and hits him on the chest and goes in, and it's a bit fortunate. But it is also true, it's the ball dropping in the kind of areas where it had done a couple of times, and Ferran Torres hadn't quite been there. And am I being oversimplistic? I think I am being oversimplistic, to be fair, but allow me to be oversimplistic just to make the point. I felt a little bit like there we saw the difference between a number 9 and Ferran Torres, who, by the way, was really, really good last season, was really quite good for the first half of this season. But just that little thing there, you kind of feel like when it comes to waiting for a decisive moment, even if his overall contribution isn't what it once was, Lewandowski still feels like, to me at least, the natural choice up front.
Ferran Torres now 13 games without scoring, and it was perhaps a bit of a blow for him to see Dani Olmo try that false 9 instead.
Yes,
of
I think it would have been. Yeah, absolutely.
Getting the nod. Lots for us to talk about this particular game, Sid. Let's talk about Lamine Yamal and his quite ridiculous performance. The first sort of 20 minutes of him in this game were just absurd, and I feel like you've done a slightly injustice by talking about that bit of ridiculous, incredible, eye-catching, magnificent, almost historic bit of skill that he did, the nutmeg and the outside of the boot pass into the path of Fermin Lopez, by just saying, I was extraordinary. That was genius. Genius from Lamine Yamal. That's one of the best bits of play we will see all season. It didn't count for anything. There's no goal, there's no assist, there's no nothing. None of the statistics will reflect it, but it was just a ridiculous bit of play from Lamine. He looked absolutely on it last night, and everything he did, every bit of skill, every bit of step over, every audacious bit of play, it wasn't done to show off. It was done because it was effective. It was the best way of getting or doing what he wanted to do. He wasn't doing it to show off. He was doing it because it was effective, and that's what I like about Lamine. So let's talk about his performance, Sid, but then also we should talk about his reaction, because he went off angry and he didn't celebrate the winning goal. And he went off angry.
And I mean, look, we don't know the reason for it. We are interpreting this rather than knowing this. But it felt to me that this was a reaction of a player who felt that they'd been pushed to the wire for longer than they should have been. You know, that the result had come late, that it'd been a little fortunate that a player who felt that he'd taken on a huge amount of responsibility to lead them in creative terms, to take the ball, to go at people, to make things happen, and it wasn't quite coming off. That at times the decision-making of his teammates wasn't great. Once or twice it wasn't great from him, but I think for the most part it was right. There's the moment, I mean, that piece of skill, which was extraordinary. And by the way, I was at the other end and I thought, oh, that was good. And then when I watched it on the replay, which I didn't actually see until later that night, I was like, God, that was even better than I thought, because the angle of it. And it was very reminiscent of the two that he did against Mallorca. Remember last season, where there's two that are almost identical, sort of bend with the outside of the boot into quite a lot of space, admittedly, but having to hit exactly the right point. There was a moment in the second half which was right in front of me, which is that move when he comes in off the right and he goes past a couple of players and it only takes him to the edge of the area. And then there's this momentary pause, and then he goes past a couple more, and then he slots it just past the post, and the ball actually almost hits where we're sitting. And you could see the angle and you could see it opening up, and you just thought, there's no way he should have been, first of all, thinking that he can get through there, let alone doing it. And I felt then, even then, having just watched him do something amazing, that he hadn't, that the frustration in him wasn't just about the fact that the shot didn't come off, which I'm sure that was the primary thing. You know, the shot didn't quite come off and it faded a little bit wide rather than taking that little bend that would have taken it inside the post. But it was also that I felt, at least, and I don't know if I'm overinterpreting this, and I may well be, that part of the frustration was the fact that he had to do the second run. Do you see what I mean? That he'd worked himself into position, and there's two more. And I think, you know, this is about Atletico double-legging up on him, but it's also about that feeling that the space in front of him and the other players need to stretch the pitch a little bit more to enable, to take people away from him, or to make it mean that when he's taken on two players, that should, in theory, leave you a big space. And it didn't. And that run, I thought, was really indicative of that, which is that he kept on doing it and then kept on having that moment when it looks like it's opening up, just closing on him. Which is why I think you can look at this at the end of the game and think, well, maybe he wasn't as effective and maybe this wasn't his greatest performance. But I think watching him up close, the speed of his feet, the way that he moves, the way that he draws players in, he is really, really special. Really special.
Really special.
I mean, we know that. I've just stated the bleeding obvious. I know, but it was very, very interesting to watch up close.
It's just make Diego Simeone's decision to start Nico Gonzalez at left back
absolutely
a little bit questionable. Yeah. And then when he was booked for trying to catch the ball on the halfway line.
He was booked for doing what you do when you're playing with your mates on the football salad court by your house, or when you're playing. Well, I'm going to take you back to my childhood. When you're playing on New River, you know, the ball is going out of play, and what do? You jump up and you catch it because no one wants to waste time of having to go and chase the ball, right? So he did that, and the ball wasn't going out of play. It was going clean through for Lamine Yamal, and he literally jumped up. And he didn't quite catch it, actually. He sort of slapped it down with his hands. Do you know what's funny about, what's interesting about this from an analytical point of view? I mean, apart from the daftness of that catch, which I think he probably felt he had to do, because I think he probably knew that Lamine had caught the space behind him, is that if you look at the second yellow card, which was then converted into a direct red, so he would have been off anyway, so it really doesn't make a huge amount of difference, is it's basically the same move. But totally different things. One's a handball and the other's a foul. But both of them are the actions of a man who is at left back against Lamine Yamal and has been caught by the clipped, curled ball into the space behind him. And both times he doesn't know what to do. So basically the first time he's like, oh God, better stop it. Jumps up, has a bit of a head fart, jumps up, catches the ball. The second time, realizes he's been caught, goes after Lamine, is worried he's not going to get there, and makes a really obvious foul, which, because it's a clear goal scoring opportunity, in the opinion of the referee, having seen the VAR screen, becomes a direct red, but would have been a yellow anyway.
It highlights the fact that there isn't a second left back in this squad for Diego Simeone. Obviously, he wanted to rest Matteo Ruggeri. Could have played young Julio Diaz, who he has done in a couple of times this season, but that would have been perhaps an even bigger risk. So we tried Nico Gonzalez. It did not work out. Just on the second yellow card, which was a long VAR.
Yeah, much longer than it needed to be, in my opinion.
Yeah. But my point, Sid, is he can that VAR upgrading to a red card, that can happen at the break. That can happen after the game. We don't need a 5-minute review. He's off.
Yeah.
He's off.
In practical terms, it didn't make.
I didn't know what they were doing. I actually didn't know.
No, nor did I in the stadium.
I had no idea.
You know what we did
looking think? At?
What we thought in the stadium. Yeah, exactly that. What we thought in the stadium
was out. He was clearly out. But then part of Nico's body was just in the penalty area as he was making the tackle, but the contact was outside. So I was thinking, is this a new rule that if your part of your body is in, but the actual contact is outside, it's a penalty? I had no idea. Anyway, that's my suggestion, guys.
Can I let you in on a little secret?
Those kind of reviews, just do it afterwards. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'll let you in a little secret. I was watching the game behind the goal with Mario Suarez, the former Atletico Madrid midfielder, because we were working on the game together for ESPN. And Johan Garcia, when the long wait happened, came over to Mario to ask him what he thought it was for.
Nice.
And there was a bit of a conversation. He said, "No, I don't think it's a penalty. I think it was outside. I don't think it's a penalty. So no, it can't be that." But there you go.
What's Mario's English like?
Very good. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, very good indeed.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Very interesting. All right. Yes. All right. Speaking of red cards and sending us off, the Gerard Martin red card, which was shown right at the start of the second half, which could have been a very different second half had it been upheld, but VAR got involved and told the referee to go and have a look and said that it wasn't a straight red. What did you make of all this?
Do you know what? What I made of this is that I don't really have an adequate answer for you. And I was thinking about this yesterday.
Okay.
And the reason I say this is that for me, two things happen that are absolutely clear cut, but they contradict each other. This is why I don't have a clear answer for you, because the first thing is that Gerard Martin, it's not even a tackle. It's him kicking the ball. And he's kicking the ball and he's entirely entitled to kick the ball and he's in possession of the ball and he kicks the ball and he swings through. That bit is absolutely clear cut. There's nothing wrong with that. What happens next is also clear cut. As he swings through, he puts his studs on the ankle, directly on the ankle. And so if you take either of those two things in isolation, you can absolutely say not even a foul and absolutely say, oof, could be a red that. Or a bright yellow, an orange yellow, but could be a red. And so those two things slightly contradict each other. Now, here's the thing that I don't understand, and I've had this discussion with my usual point of contact when it comes to asking about refereeing decisions when I'm a bit baffled. What I don't really understand is why the VAR intervened, because I think this was an interpretive one. And so I don't really see it as a black and white VAR intervention decision.
Completely agree.
Honest.
Completely
that's
agree.
The
referee
has seen
it. The referee has seen it. He's made his judgment call. It's right in front of him. And why is the VAR getting involved?
Yeah, that's the bit I didn't understand. So I mean, I could have understood either decision. In truth, what I could have understood either decision. What I couldn't really understand is the VAR intervening. And then there's been a little bit of a hoo-ha, because if you listen to the VAR audio, the guy in the VAR room says, the normal thing, come and have a look for a possible, change of the decision. And then he shows him the footage, and the guy in the VAR room, which I think is Melero Lopez, says, in my opinion,
no,
that's entirely, that's an entirely normal movement of the foot. Now, for what it's worth, you can have that opinion, absolutely fine.
Yeah,
but
in
theory, if you're exactly
the VAR shouldn't be saying that.
Yeah, in theory, you're in the VAR room. You should only be saying one of a handful of things. The first one is you should be saying, "Come and have a look at it," so that you have a look at a possible change in this for this reason. Boom. You can then say, "I'm going to show you the other angle, which gives you the contact." You can then say, "I'm going to show you the slowed down version so that you see who gets there first." You can't say is, "Listen, mate, I reckon it's a pen. Give a pen," or "Listen, mate, I reckon it's a red. Give a red." You're not supposed to be saying that.
They're absolutely not supposed to be saying that. But there we go. The decision was overturned, and Gerard Martin played the rest of the second half. This is, of course, the first in the 10-day trilogy of Barcelona against Atletico Madrid. We've got the second coming up on Wednesday night, the first leg of the Champions League quarterfinal. How will this condition the rest of the trilogy? Because I feel like, obviously Barcelona got the win. Great. That's what they wanted. They're 7 points clear at the top. But also, Atletico Madrid put in the kind of performance that can reinforce them.
Absolutely agree. And before the game, there were talking to Atletico's supporting colleagues. They were saying, if we lose 1-0, that's fine, so long as we look like we've competed, so long as we don't get anyone injured, so long as we're not exhausted off the back of it. And obviously, in an ideal world, maybe a couple of their guys get injured or a couple of their guys are exhausted. Then great. I think that this performance did that. I think we see that in the introduction of two youth teamers. You look at that midfield at the end of the game, the four across midfield. I think it was 3 of them under 21 and the other 24. I think Vargas is 23 or 4. But 4 players who normally wouldn't play. So you're allowing some rotation there, partly, of course, because they didn't have players available across midfield. You have to get Koke off early. You have to get Griezmann off early. You have to give Julian a run out, but not for very long. And I think all of those things happened. And so you've
Apart
largely...
from Julian.
Yes. You've largely got what you wanted from this game. Now, there is one counter argument to that. And there was a bit... You're sort of thinking, the worst case scenario for Atletico here is just when it looks like, Real Madrid have blown the league, is to give it back to them by beating Barcelona. But actually, it would have been handy to have forced Barcelona into a position where they couldn't risk rotating next weekend between the two Champions League games. Now, I do think there is a bit of a risk that we talk ourselves into a spiral that makes it all about the two Champions League games and we ignore this game, because this game was big, at least for Barcelona. But I agree with you. I think if we look at this in the context of the trilogy, in which each game is slightly more important than the last until we reach the the third game, which will be the big one, unless, of course, the first game delivers a result that means the third game's irrelevant, which isn't very likely. The first Champions League game, that is. I think this is a game that sets it up reasonably nicely and says that it will be competitive.
Sydney league title race over.
Well,
what did you say last week?
It's worse than last week. I think I said it on Thursday.
What did you say on Thursday?
So literally just 2 days ago, I say, Real Madrid are going to win the league, aren't they?
You did say that. Yes,
because I'd sort of looked at how somehow they kept getting away with it. I thought, I've been here before. We've all been here before. And I was looking at fixtures this weekend, and I will be honest, I didn't anticipate Real Madrid being beaten in Mallorca, even though, and we'll come on to this game in a minute. Let's leave it for the moment, even though it actually played out the way we've seen some games play out this season. And I thought that, there's a very good chance, partly because of the conditioning factor of it being 3 games, that Barcelona don't win at the Metropolitano. And the opposite happened. So it's 7 points. So is it over? No, because it's never entirely over. But I think it's pretty close now, yes. And in the complete opposite direction to what I said just 2 days ago. So that tells you, don't trust me.
Good. We won't.
Good. One other thing, Kitro, before we move on. I just wanted to say something, because I'm going to say that I saw up close a really impressive and very striking performance from a player who, I'll be honest with you, I was not at all convinced about. And so, João Cancelo, just let me say, you played very well indeed.
And he has been playing well for a while.
Yeah, he has been. Exactly. I agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, that's João Cancelo, who, like the rest of this episode, is brought to you by our friends at NordVPN, Phil.
Is he? Okay. Well, that's news to João, I'm sure. But there we go.
He's thinking, what are these guys talking about? Yes.
You guys obviously know that we travel a lot covering Spanish football. We follow Spanish teams around Europe in the Champions League.
Or we go to, 3 games a weekend in the domestic league.
The best way to make sure you've got access to all your content from back home is using NordVPN,
which we will be using this summer when we head to the US to watch Spain in the World Cup.
Whether it's keeping up with the football, TV shows, or movies, NordVPN lets you access your subscriptions back home wherever you are.
And it's really easy to use, which is particularly important if, like me, you're not very tax savvy, or even tech savvy.
It also improves your internet security, which is important if you spend a lot of time using public Wi-Fi, Sydney.
You mean the kind of places I am most of the time, like train stations, airports, hotel lobbies, or just trying to get down a street?
Indeed. You connect with just one click. It's one of the fastest VPNs around, and you can use up to 10 devices with one account. So for more information, you need to head to nordvpn.com/TSFP.
And there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. You also get 4 extra months for free. So could you tell me that link again, please, Philip?
nordvpn.com/TSFP. So Real Mallorca 2, Real Madrid 1, part 2,396 of Real Madrid aren't very good, Sid. We've been here before. We've seen this game before. What did we think?
Right, well, let me tell you, apart from the fact we've seen this game before quite a lot this season, the game that really came to mind watching this was Real Madrid being beaten at Osasuna. And it was so similar that I actually went and looked it up again, because I thought, have I tricked myself? How about this? So Osasuna go 1-0 up against Real Madrid on 38 minutes. Mallorca go 1-0 up against Real Madrid on 41 minutes. There you go, pretty close. Yeah. On 73 minutes, Real Madrid make it 1-1. Vinicius scores. On 88 minutes, admittedly, a bit later, Militao makes it 1-1. Real Madrid score. So it's 1-1 in both games. And you're thinking, in both games, Real Madrid will go for this and they will win this, because we know what Real Madrid are like. And the opposite happens. In the 90th minute, Raul Garcia scores for Osasuna to win 2-1. And the 90th minute, Vedat Murici, well, actually, it was the 89th minute, scores for Mallorca to make it 2-1. And for me, those are the basic nuts and bolts that bring you the similarities. But one of the striking things in both of these games, and Arbeloa said it after both of them, and he said yesterday after the Mallorca game, what was his line? He said, the most disappointing thing for me was the lack of a reaction in the second half. Now, I don't want to go all sort of simplistic football fan on you, but I'm going to go all simplistic football fan on you. You watch these two games, you think, do they just not care enough? And I hate this kind of analysis because it feels like such a cop-out. But
it's difficult not to draw that conclusion.
Exactly.
Witnessing what you've witnessed with your own eyes.
Yeah.
It's difficult not to come to that kind of conclusion. They had 2 shots on target in the second half, Sydney, with the league title. They were fighting for the league. That was it. The league was on the line. Yeah. There was nothing. The only person trying anything was Vinicius.
Yeah. And Vinicius was trying it in Vinicius's way. Get the ball, go at people, run at people, sort of, how do I put this? Kind of make the play happen because there's not very much else around you. And it didn't really seem to have a contagious impact upon anyone with him either. Funny enough, Madrid actually made more chances in the first half than in the second. But even then, and we were talking about this just amongst ourselves, weren't we, on the afternoon of the game, just sort of saying, this first half performance isn't the worst ever, but it's another one of these where they just don't play much football.
Well, you were like, in any other season, this would be rubbish, but in this season,
it's not that rubbish. And what's really striking, again, to draw that parallel with the Osasuna game and to speak to what Arbeloa said post-game, was that the second half was disappointing because we didn't go for it. And Arbeloa makes this comment where he says, because he was asked if maybe this was that partido trampa. Is this game going to be a trap? Is this a potential banana skin? I suppose would be the English cliche for this. And he says no. And what was his phrase? He said, "I've had 750, or was it 517? Anyway, it was something like that. 517 alarms go off to tell me, don't fall into the trap. Don't fall into the trap." And this was put to him after the game. What about all those alarms? He said, "Well, I knew, but it can be hard to get through to your players unless we give 200%. You can get beaten." And there were 2 things that I thought here, and they are 2 contradictory thoughts. So again, I'm not giving you a good answer here. I apologize for that. And there were 2 contradictory thoughts. The first one was, surely that's your job to get that message through to them. Surely you as coach, this is precisely what you're here for. And in particular, this is what you, Arbeloa, are here for. Because in theory, you came partly because the previous coach, who we thought was a structural manager, systems manager, someone who was going to take them into a new era and all the rest of it, wasn't reaching the players. And you're here to reach the players. And actually, in fairness to Arbeloa, for the most part, we've seen that he, broadly speaking, has done. Although let's not forget that he was the coach in Pamplona, for example, against Osasuna and against Albacete in the Cup and so on. But that's one answer. Then the other contradictory one is, no, that's right. They didn't get it in the head. And you shouldn't need to tell them that.
Yes.
When, as you've just said, the league is on the line. And so I realise that these 2 things are completely contradictory, but they're both pretty lamentable as well, to be perfectly honest.
A lot of criticism of Eduardo Camavinga, Sid, particularly in that first goal.
Yeah. I mean, I said this to you, and you're in the fortunate position of not having fallen into the trap that I fell into. I've always kind of felt like there's a really good player there with Camavinga. I've always kind of clung on to this. He's going to be brilliant. And every now and again, I sort of think he is. But actually, I think that every now and again has been a long time now. And it just kind of, I'm not saying he's always bad because he's not always bad. But there isn't the thing there that I thought there was. And as you say, the criticism for him is because he's ambling about a little bit. And because on the goal he doesn't get there and he doesn't see the danger and he doesn't cover and he doesn't reach Manu Morlanes. And which defender is it? I think it's Rudiger, isn't it? Steps away from him because he's looking at Murici, thinking that someone else will pick up Morlanes, who's coming in from slightly deeper. And yeah, it's not good. It's not good. But I think it's more than one player. And again, I don't want to go over old ground, but if you're a Madrid fan, and actually I'd like to know what our Madrid supporting listeners think. How frustrated would you be with Kylian Mbappe, who is clearly brilliant, and clearly on some levels at least, you can't possibly complain about him.
Well, he hasn't scored in his last 5 games.
But yeah, he's frustrating, isn't he? And maybe the knee is still an issue. Maybe he's not fully fit. And actually, in this game, in fairness to him, in the first half, he's the one making things happen from that left-sided position where I think he's normally quite comfortable coming inside, dropping the shoulder. There's a couple of very good saves from Leo Roman. I'm not going to overplay it because it's not like Leo Roman was absolutely outrageous, but he makes a couple of pretty good saves. I mean, right, let's go back to our conversations when Xabi Alonso was sacked.
Mm-hmm.
Are we still talking about what we were talking about then? Are we still talking about some sort of cultural deficit? Is that the right way of looking at this?
Well, what's changed?
Well, what's changed is we've got a reaction and a structure, I think, in the Champions League games. I think we've got performances from Thiago, which I think helps a little bit. But I think that Champions League reaction was probably likely to have happened anyway. And Fede Valverde as well, who was missing from this game, in fairness.
That Champions League structure, it's going to go out the window when Mbappe and Bellingham are back.
It might do. It might do. Yeah, it might.
Well, we had that structure because Brahim and Thiago were in the team. And
well, we had to be fair, we had two, didn't we? Because we talked about how, is it I think it's the second Benfica game, given that they played each other in the league phase, isn't it? The second of three, I think, where they played three in front of the back four. Three kind of muscular, athletic midfielders, Fede alongside Germany, and the other one was Camavinga, wasn't it?
Camavinga,
who played okay, actually, in fairness. And then there's a new change with Thiago, and you're right. What's changed? I don't know how much has changed.
Vedat Muriqi is incredible.
Oh, and I feel sorry now that we didn't start on him because I think he's brilliant. I think he is the best player in Spain this season. Right, to be fair,
I mean,
if we're balancing expectation against reality, and if we're going to let's use that boxing term, which I think gets massively, really poorly used all the time, but pound for pound, you know, in terms of the value against what you expect, and in terms of the cost of him, and in terms of the level or the category he's at, you know, no one has made the contribution he's made to Mallorca, to any of their teams.
No, of course not.
He's phenomenal, and the reaction was brilliant. He scores, he lies on the floor, he starts sobbing, and he says post game, he said, "Look, 2 weeks ago I had the penalty in the 92nd minute against Elche, a massive game for Mallorca, and I missed it. And then I go with Kosovo to try and get to the World Cup, the dream of my life, and we missed out on it. And then I come here and we go 1-0 up, and then it's 1-1, and it's Real Madrid, and you're thinking they're coming at you. And then you get that goal." He said, you know, and then he used that phrase. He said, "I might look ugly and hard on the outside, but I'm a human too."
Beautiful phrase. 19 league goals.
It's phenomenal. It really is.
Absolutely ridiculous from Muriqi. What a finish as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah,
unbelievable finish.
He's turning away from the foot that he would like to use, if he
Yeah.
possibly can, and he absolutely smashes it.
Mhm. Okay, well, Real Madrid inevitably going to beat Bayern Munich 4-0 on Tuesday night.
100%.
I mean, this is just ridiculous and difficult to explain, so we won't even try. You were at Getafe Athletic today, Sid, were you?
No, I didn't. I didn't go to that.
No, you didn't
No,
go.
no, I didn't go to that. No.
I was going to say that was might have been even a step too far for you.
I was hoping to get up to Oviedo, but it couldn't get there either. There were no trains.
No, yes. But Oviedo won, Sid.
Amazing.
You need to win 6 of the last 8.
Yeah. I mean,
You've won
look.
5 all season.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's not going to happen. You know, the recent results would suggest you maybe have a chance, but everything, you know, Mallorca, right? Having just lauded Mallorca, can I now just say that Mallorca, you're a bunch of assholes? How dare you?
Selfish bastards. Winning and moving away from the relegation zone.
How dare, and making our gap from us and safety that little bit bigger. Yeah.
So was it 7 points? Yeah.
7 points where it might have been 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, 5, you might have thought there's a chance. 7, to be honest, I don't think you do.
God, Sevilla are in trouble, aren't they? Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just extraordinary what's gone on there. First game in charge for Luis Garcia Plaza, and no reaction. So there we go. My goodness, I was stressed watching Rayo against Elche, Sid. I think it might have been the most stressed I've been watching a game for some time
because of all the misses, right?
Yeah, because of all the misses. You know what? It's quite funny. One of our patrons on the Discord messaged saying, "Yeah, I was sat a few rows behind Kitro at the Rayo game. It was incredible to see his passion." I was like, "Why do you come and say hello?" It's like, "Oh, he looked a bit stressed."
You looked a bit.
I was all over the place. I was in pieces because Rayo just missed so many chances, and I've seen this game so many times before. and then you end up losing or drawing, and it was very, very nervous. But in the end, Rayo managed to beat Elche. Elche in all sorts of trouble. Rayo are 6 points above the relegation zone. Should be okay, but that Mallorca result has put the cat amongst the pigeons, Sid, for a few teams.
It has. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Sevilla are one of 3 teams on 31 points. Sevilla
at the moment,
obviously about to play. Yeah, and who's the other one? Is it? It's not you, is it? Who's the other one? I'm missing someone.
Mallorca.
Oh, Mallorca themselves, of course. Yeah, sorry. Mallorca, of course, it's in Mallorca. Yeah.
Yes. So there we go. Very tight at the bottom of the table. Before we go in the Segunda, top of the table, Racing were beaten 6-2 by Andorra, having gone 2-0 up. My God,
second division's brilliant, isn't it?
It's so mad. It's such a mad division. It's extraordinary. That means they're only 2 points clear of Depor in second place after they drew 1-1 with Malaga, who are fourth. Almeria are third. They're playing Leganés at the time of recording. And Burgos are going well in fifth. They won 3-2 at Albacete. We'll be over at patreon.com/TSFP for the rest of the week. Come and join us. There'll be loads of content there. It costs just over €1 a week, and you get lots of bang for your buck. And if not, we'll be back on Friday to preview what's coming up this weekend. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the support, and we'll speak soon. Adios.
Cheerio.